You wake up. You take the train. Just like every other morning. But today, something's off. The floor is sticky, people are coughing, some are convulsing, and in seconds, the air turns lethal. March 20th, 1995, Tokyo's busiest subway line. A group of men in suits walk in and release a nerve gas so deadly, it's banned in warfare. 12 dead, thousands injured. But what if I told you that wasn't the real plan? That was just the warning shot. A signal from a doomsday cult that believed they were humanity's last hope. And they had everything: chemical weapons, elite scientists, government spies, and a guru who claimed he could levitate, read minds, and restart the world. You think you'd never fall for something like that? So did Japan's brightest minds, doctors, engineers, military officers. All of them followed him. So the real question isn't, how did it happen? It's, could it happen again? Because once you hear what Aum Shinrikyo and Shoko Asahara nearly pulled off, you'll realize the Tokyo subway attack wasn't their final act. It was only the beginning. Before he became Japan's most feared man, Shoko Asahara was the kid no one wanted to be. Partially blind, bullied, poor. But here's the twist. He was the bully. At a government school for the blind, Asahara tormented classmates who couldn't see at all. He used his slight advantage, his remaining vision, to dominate them. And he learned something, not just that people could be manipulated, but that he liked it. Fast forward to 1987, Tokyo. Asahara rebrands himself as a spiritual leader. He launches a yoga class, Aum Shinrikyo, and people show up. Stressed students, burned out professionals, lonely seekers. They came for healing. They stayed for the promise. Surrender your mind, your money, your body, and transcend this broken world. Asahara claimed he'd done it, not just spiritual insight. He said he was the first enlightened being since Buddha, and somehow people believed him. But these weren't dropouts or wanderers. These were Japan's elite. Engineers, physicists, doctors. Many were Tokyo University graduates. Some walked away from top jobs, tech firms, hospitals, universities, to live in concrete dorms, take cold showers, hand over everything, all to follow a man who said he could levitate. Because Aum didn't sell faith. It sold certainty. It said, the world is broken. You know that, but here's the real truth, and you can help fix it. Asahara wasn't just preaching. He was recruiting, like a CEO. He launched the New Followers Agency, targeted campuses, military units, government workers. Aum wasn't just chanting, it was building chemical labs, data networks, recruitment algorithms. Most cults use fear. Aum used anime. They created full-length animated shows, space journeys, sacred scrolls, secret conspiracies, and at the end, the truth was always Aum. These weren't crude doodles. They were polished, sci-fi style. Think Dragon Ball Z meets Doomsday prophecy. They also released comics and magazines, mixing New Age mysticism with apocalyptic visuals. One cover showed Asahara flying in lotus pose, preaching the end times. It was brilliant and terrifying because it made Aum feel modern, cool, safe. Even after the subway attack, that image stuck. Aum's spokesperson, Fumihiro Joyu, became a teen idol. Girls wrote fan letters, called him cute, said they wanted to join, even as bodies were still being counted in the subway. That's the power of aesthetics. Wrap the apocalypse in glossy visuals and a smiling face. And you don't have to hide the death cult. You just have to animate it. This wasn't a religion. It was a tech startup from hell. What drew people in wasn't just salvation. It was the sense of joining a higher caste, a chosen future. We thought we were building something sacred, one former member said years later. We didn't realize we were building a weapon. So ask yourself, if the world felt hopeless and someone offered you purpose, community, and the power to remake everything, would you really say no? You know that moment in every horror movie when the quiet house creaks just a little too much? That was Aum Shinrikyo in the early 90s. Aum's vision didn't stop at Japan. Quietly, it was beginning to spread beyond it. On the surface, they were still peaceful, selling tofu, running bookstores, teaching yoga. But behind closed doors, they were building a war machine. Computer shops doubled as intel hubs. Secret labs produced chemicals no one should ever touch. Members posed as telecom workers to wiretap government offices. And inside Japan's military, Aum had infiltrators. At the top sat Asahara, no longer just a guru, now a god king presiding over a parallel society. Aum had its own ministries, intelligence, health, science, its own language, its own laws, its own plan for the end of the world. Joining Aum wasn't like joining a church. It was enrolling in a brutal spiritual boot camp. At first, it looked like wellness, meditation, yoga, cleansing diets. But then the rituals changed. They told you pain meant ego death, that fear meant you were nearing truth, and if you resisted, they had ways to help. LSD to open your third eye, sleep deprivation to kill doubt, shock therapy to purify your spirit, hanging you upside down until you blacked out, solitary confinement, your only companion, hallucinations. This wasn't meditation, it was chemical reprogramming. Still, people stayed, because every punishment was a gift from Asahara, a step closer to transcendence. One former member put it simply, you stop thinking. You start seeing him as the only light. He says jump. You ask how high, even if the floor is covered in sarin. This didn't just break people, it rebuilt them into soldiers who'd kill without question. They weren't monsters, they were made. And soon, they proved it. In 1989, a lawyer named Tsutsumi Sakamoto raised concerns. He was helping parents get their kids out of Aum. He gave a TV interview. Days later, he vanished. So did his wife and infant son. Their bodies wouldn't be found for 10 years. Aum got away with it. And when no one stopped them, they escalated. They wanted weapons. Big ones. First, biological. They sprayed botulinum toxin at political rallies, tried to release anthrax from their Tokyo compound, even grew lab-bred pathogens. But they made one fatal mistake. They used the wrong anthrax strain. Instead of death, they just stank up the neighborhood. A failed bioterror attack. But the intent was real. And when it failed, they pivoted to chemical weapons, sarin, VX gas, no incubation, no warning, just drop and watch people die. This made the 1995 subway attack inevitable, but they'd already practiced. In 1994, Aum released sarin in Matsumoto, targeting judges ruling against them. 8 dead, 500 poisoned. Still, no one stopped them. Meanwhile, they were expanding, quietly and globally. By 1995, Aum had 50,000 members in Russia. They aired broadcasts on Russian radio, opened recruitment centers, courted scientists, tried to buy AK-74s and chemical precursors. Rumors swirled, unconfirmed, of nuclear ambitions. Russia didn't ban them until 2000, 5 years after the Tokyo attack. Aum wasn't thinking small. They were building a global cult empire. They called it Shambhala. And their ideology, it wasn't peace, it was annihilation. Asahara didn't just think he was enlightened. He believed he was chosen, the reincarnation of Christ, the final Buddha, the only one to reach the final state of consciousness. But he wasn't preaching salvation. He was preaching Armageddon. He quoted Revelation, cited Nostradamus, praised Hitler. Aum didn't believe the world might end. They believed it must, and that they had to help. They called it the final war, a nuclear conflict between Japan and the US, a cleansing, a rebirth. Only Aum would survive. Everyone else? Collateral damage. Their scriptures were clear. To realize the plan, it is correct to kill the powers against Aum Shinrikyo. That wasn't metaphor. It was doctrine. Aum wasn't just a cult. It was a government in waiting. And every murder, an act of mercy. It's rush hour. March 20th, 1995. You board the train. Coffee in one hand, briefcase in the other. Just like any other Monday. But something's wrong. The air smells sharp, metallic. A man stumbles, then another drops. People start coughing, screaming. Your throat tightens. Vision blurs. Panic sets in. And before you can react, you're in the middle of a chemical attack. 5 subway cars, 3 train lines, all converging beneath Japan's government district. The packages were small, plastic bags wrapped like leftovers. Inside, sarin, one of the deadliest nerve agents ever created. The attackers, not foreign terrorists, not trained soldiers, doctors, chemists, disciples, followers of Shoko Asahara. They carried sharpened umbrellas, pierced the bags, dropped them to the floor, and calmly walked away. What came next was chaos. Over 6,000 affected, dozens blinded, organs shut down, children foamed at the mouth, hospitals overflowed, train stations became war zones. But here's what most people never hear. This wasn't the apocalypse. It was a test, a failed rehearsal, because they had more sarin, VX gas, cyanide canisters, rigged to release across the subway network. One was planted. It just never triggered. Had the timing gone differently, Tokyo could have seen the worst chemical massacre in modern history. But why? Why poison an entire city? Because Asahara didn't believe Armageddon was coming. He believed it needed to start. And he believed Aum would be the only ones left standing. After the sarin gas attack, Tokyo was stunned, not just by the horror, but by the realization that a domestic religious group had nearly pulled off a weapon of mass destruction. This time, the police moved fast. 2 months later, they found him, Shoko Asahara, hiding inside a wall in Aum's fortified compound. He hadn't levitated. He hadn't escaped. He was trembling, silent, just a man, exposed. His trial lasted 8 years. He was convicted on 13 counts: murder, abduction, chemical warfare, sentenced to death. On July 6, 2018, over 2 decades later, he was hanged, alongside 6 of his top disciples. You'd think that would be the end, but it wasn't. Because belief doesn't die with a leader. Sometimes, it just changes form. In 2000, Aum Shinrikyo rebranded. They changed their name to Aleph. New name, same beliefs. They opened computer shops, yoga centers, sold organic food, filed reports with the government. But beneath the calm, the cult was rebuilding, quietly, strategically. 1,600 members in Japan, 300 in Russia. In 2007, a splinter group appeared, Hikari no Wa. They claimed they'd left the violence behind. Authorities weren't convinced. Both groups remain under surveillance to this day. Because cults don't die. They fracture. They evolve. They wait. And in 2019, one of them struck again. New Year's Day, Takashita Street, Tokyo. A man drove his car into a crowd, injured 9. When questioned, he said it was retaliation for an execution. He didn't say whose, but the year before, Asahara and his lieutenants were executed. Coincidence, or proof the virus still lives? Because here's what's terrifying. We focus on the cult leader. We celebrate his downfall, but we forget the thousands who still believed him. Many never renounced Aum. Some still haven't. You can execute a man, but you can't execute belief. Most people hear this story and say, I'd never fall for that. But the people who joined Aum weren't naive. They weren't broken. They were some of Japan's brightest minds. Engineers, doctors, idealists. What they were was searching for meaning, for purpose, for a place in a world that felt cold and chaotic. Asahara gave them that. Not just a religion, a role, a mission. It didn't happen all at once. It happened slowly, one yoga class at a time, a little isolation, a little control, a little fear, until one day, you're not meditating anymore. You're making sarin gas. Cults don't hijack your intelligence. They hijack your loneliness, your need to belong, your need to feel special. They offer clarity in a world full of noise. And that's what makes them dangerous. Because when someone says, I have the answer, everyone else is lying to you, that doesn't always sound like a threat. It sounds like hope. Aum Shinrikyo is gone in name, but the psychology that built it, that's everywhere. In our echo chambers, in our influences, in every voice that says, only I can save you. Only I know the truth. Follow me. Just like those commuters on that March morning, none of them thought they were stepping into a cult. Just a train ride, just another day, until it wasn't. So the real lesson isn't about Asahara, it's about us. Because if we don't understand how people fall into cults, we won't see the next one coming. If this story made you pause, if it made you rethink how cults work, or made you wonder how many people around you might be searching for something to believe in, then ask yourself, what would you have done if you were 25, lost, and someone promised they could save the world? Let's talk about it. What do you think makes someone vulnerable to manipulation like this? Have you ever had a close call? Something that felt just a little too controlling? And if you want more deep dives into how belief becomes control, how everyday people get pulled into unthinkable choices, because this isn't just history. The next cult story might be even closer than you think. Hit subscribe.